Good evening and welcome to a regular meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. It is Tuesday, February 15th, 2022, 6 p.m. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time. And first invite you to stand and join us tonight in an invocation led by Pastor Brian Haynes from the Family Bible Church. And immediately following that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Haynes.
All right, please join me in the invocation. God, we ask for your wisdom and guidance to lead our council members in their discussion of the needs and plans of our city. Give clarity to the council as they discuss each item listed on the agenda for tonight's meeting. We ask that you give clarity of thought and speech to our citizens who will share their concerns and ideas, and that you will grant them peace in their presentations. Finally, we ask that you grant us unity as a city. Though we may differ in many ways, help us to find unity in our diversity that will create lasting impact for Oak Harbor for many years to come. Thank you for granting us the opportunity to meet physically and virtually. May this meeting honor you and honor the people of Oak Harbor. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Haynes. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So due to COVID-19, this will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Due to Governor Inslee's order, masks are required for everyone in council chambers, regardless of vaccination status. City staff are participating via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. Tonight's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and on cable channel 10, HD 1090. So this evening, I think we have a full council, so we will pass on the roll call for that. Okay, great. We'll go to the item number 1, which is approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any suggested changes or? Okay, seeing none, will the agenda will be approved as presented. We have no proclamations or presentations under Section 2, so that takes us immediately on to our citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. Citizens may also comment on corresponding agenda items. In this hybrid meeting format, citizens can attend and give comment in person or via the online comment form at www.oakharbor.org/public comment, or Mayor's comment box online on the city website via the search box or under How Do I under the second column labeled Contact the City, or email the city clerk at jlindsay@oakharbor.org prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or call 360-279-4571 to leave a voicemail to be played during the council meeting. Call to leave a voicemail after 5 p.m. on Friday preceding the meeting and prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. When leaving a voicemail for public comment, please state your first and last name clearly and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We received no comments from city employees since our last meeting. We received one comment from the public regarding utility rates, which was forwarded to council and is being displayed now. So I'll give you a second to read that. Okay, so any public, or are there any members of the public present who wish to speak? Did we
Yes,
do?
Mayor.
Okay,
Barbara Arms.
okay.
Well, I always talk about the utility rates. What can I say? I'm Barbara Arms. I live at 351 Northeast Noonan Loop here in Oak Harbor. First, I want to thank all of you because I realize you have other commitments. You work, your life isn't just about council. There's a lot you have to learn, and I appreciate it even though I'm passionate about things. The rate issue is something that's not going to go away. People are still unhappy. So my question is, why do we have weekly garbage and recycle in the city when you have it you don't have it in the county? Why don't you allow the residents to choose what they want weekly or bi-weekly and let the bill reflect that? Why is our dump site only open 3 days a week instead of 5? Why don't we know ahead of time about tipping fees, and why have we not done a rate study on water and trash more often to get ahead of this? We have used from the general fund, as Jimmy did that, why not look at this again? And we must be able to use money maybe from the American Resource Plan. I am available to anybody who wants to work on this, how we can avoid this rapid increase in rates. I am available. I am willing to learn. I'm willing to work with you to figure out what we can do. I am open to anything. I thank you for all that you do, but we just need to do something because people cannot afford this, especially with it going even higher. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else in the audience? Okay. Okay, that'll close the citizen comment period. Then we'll go on at this point to our consent agenda. Tonight, what do we have? Items number 4A through C. And unless there's any questions about that, the consent agenda will be approved as presented. Okay. Mayor's comments, announcements, and upcoming events. The city offices will be closed in observance of President's Day on the February 21st. Please see our website for your garbage services pickup dates for your area. They will change based on that that holiday. Student achievements. Members of the Oak Harbor High School wrestling team have qualified for regionals. Congratulations to them for their hard work. We wish them well as they represent Oak Harbor. Council retreat. We are looking at Thursday, March 31st, for the council retreat, pending confirmation of a facilitator and location. We appreciate, excuse me, the input we've received from members of council. We ask that council please save the date and confirm availability with the city clerk, Julie Lindsay, or executive assistant, Mikhail Finkel. Puget Sound Energy, last week the city received notification of a proposed 3-year rate increase by Puget Sound Energy, and that will be for 2023, 2024, and 2025. To quote their media release, for residential customers, the proposal would increase rates in the first year by a net of 12.9% for electricity and 11.9% for natural gas, starting in January 2023, with increases of between 1.2 and 2.7% in the second and third years. If the request is approved, the typical residential electric customer would see an average monthly bill increase of $12, and a typical natural gas customer a monthly increase of $9 per year. PSE has filed this 3-year rate plan request with the Washington Utilities and Transportation Committee. Their media release also notes, quote, actions proposed by PSE include a new discount rate for low-income customers and seniors, increased funding for low-income bill payment assistance, as well as a new program that would forgive the debt of eligible customers facing significant past due balances. According to PSE, the request covers more than $450 million of expenses driven by Washington's Clean Energy Transformation Act, which requires utilities to be coal-free by 2025, carbon neutral by 2030, and carbon-free by 2045. The incremental costs were laid out in the Clean Energy Implementation Plan that PSE filed in December. In Washington, any proposed rate changes for an investor-owned utility undergo a review process of up to 11 months by the commission. For more information, visit PSE's website, pse.com. We've got some staffing promotions and new employees. I'd like to read some of these for you this evening. I'm delighted to announce that a number of our current staff have received well-deserved promotions. Congratulations to Eric Benson, promotion in the, is that the wastewater? WWC storm drain, it looks like. Okay, Specialist 1 being promoted to Specialist 2. Mark Hitzman, it looks like storm drain, same department, Specialist 1 to Specialist 2. Kamak, promotion from Senior Planner to Principal Planner. Ray Lindenberg, promotion from Associate Planner to Senior Planner. Marianne Ledgerwood, promotion from Paralegal to Senior Paralegal. Kim Perrine, promotion from Senior Administrative Assistant to Senior Legal Assistant. Corey Prussia, promotion from Lab Tech to Lab Chemist. And finally, Jack Robinson, promotion from Clean Water Facility Lead to Clean Water Facility Supervisor. So congratulations to all employees for their promotions and hard work to earn those. Please welcome aboard the following new employees. Michael Knoll, police officer. Alana Lake, public records officer. Patty O'Mahony, permit coordinator. Jay Jones, police officer. Synovia Lehman, grants administrator. And finally to Peter Landry, project engineer. Also wanted to tell you that many of you have probably read a statement that of support that I sent to our state and regional legislative representatives, area leaders, and news media. I am continuing to promote and support Naval Air Station Whidbey Island and its training operations, which are so vital to our community and our country. This statement was provided to council, and we've got it on display here now. And I know that you, as a council, well, the previous council did a proclamation in support of NASWE not long ago. This is kind of a continuation of that effort. So I guess we'll leave that up. I think you've all seen that anyway on council. At this point, I'll turn to council for council comments. Councilor Stuckey.
Yeah, I'd just like to give a little nudge to my peers. I kind of made it a point to try to go to every ribbon cutting for the new businesses here in town. I've done that since November. I think I've only missed one. And out of those 4 or 5 ribbon cuttings, I've found myself being the only one from the city that attends, which is a little unfortunate for these folks that are opening up businesses and taking a risk in our city limits. It's a great way to get to know some people outside of council chambers, some new faces, some old ones. You can definitely find those dates and times on this chamber's website, but I would just encourage if we could all try to go in force to these things when possible. It might be a nice way to show support for those that have decided to open up businesses here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Stuckey. Councilor Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, as I look out at the council chambers here and see quite a few seats full, that's a wonderful thing. The public comments that we see that come in, letters to the editor with regards to the vacant council seat, to have nine applicants there, all wonderful things. a quote comes to mind that was once said by a very talented and probably equally troubled man. What would life be with no courage to attempt anything? Everybody that's in here tonight is showing that courage to attempt to make things better. And I would continue to implore the public, come be part of the process. Let us know what your needs are. Let us know how we can help you. And to everybody here tonight and to all the applicants that have showed that courage to be part of this process, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hoffmeyer. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for writing that letter of support. I think it's really important to have a joint message. A short question for David Goldman at some time. How are we with the utility? We made the adjustments with the billing to help people out, to make plans, and I just didn't know where we stood, how many have taken advantage. So at a workshop or the next meeting, whenever, I mean, it's not a big thing. I just would like to know how that's going. It's been, about a month or a month and a half since we voted on that. So that's it. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and thanks for those folks who are taking the time to come in with their comments. I noticed one of the comments, I think there's still a misconception out there as to whether the council chambers are open or not, and certainly they are. We all have to put on one of these, but certainly we welcome folks from the community to come in. And Barbara, would you give me a call tomorrow morning, and I'll answer some of your questions for you. My phone number is available on the city website. Okay? All right. Thank you for taking the time.
Anyone else for council comments? Okay. Not seeing any. We'll move on to our agenda item. At this time, we'll go to item number 7A, Resolution 22-02, approving Patrick McVay Acorn sculpture location. Anything for that? Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Yes. I move that the mayor execute Resolution 22
Oh, wait. Oh, wait, we're going to have a quick presentation.
Oh, gotcha.
Boy, I do like the idea of getting the meeting over with quickly, though. That's all right.
I think it's great.
Hey, Gideon.
How fast with presentation. Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. Good evening, council and citizens. It's wonderful to see folks filling up those audience chairs. Anyway, I do have a short, very short PowerPoint here for you. There we go. Is everybody seeing the PowerPoint there? All right. So, yeah, this is to approve the location for Patrick McVay's Acorn. Whoop. There we go. A little brief introduction to it and talk about the original location that was looked at, Arts Commission decision, as well as the Parks Board, and of course the recommended motion and questions, discussion. So the Acorn sculpture, it was from the post office oak tree, so 300-year-old oak tree that was cut a few years ago. Here's a good photo of it from April of 2021. And as it kind of progressed, the August picture, I like this photograph from August because Pat McVay is in the background there. There are all these little Easter eggs in the carving at the base of it. So you have a salmon, you've got clams, tribal paddle, oak leaf, of course. And this is pretty much what the finished product looks like. So we initially wanted to put it at the post office. There's another carving by Patrick McVay, a large bench that's on your right-hand side as you enter the post office. Unfortunately, we had everything done, and then when we sent the professional service agreement to the postmaster, he sent it to his legal counsel, and his attorney said, no,
you can't even volunteer to pull weeds in the post office lawn. So they don't accept any gifts at all. It's not the fault of the postmaster. It's just their policy. And I cite it there out of their handbook. So we're kind of back to the drawing board. So the Arts Commission decided that the spot between Wells Fargo Bank and People's Bank would be ideal. Here we have a bench area. The sculpture would probably sit on one of these panels. For some reason that got moved. Anyway, this gives you an idea of what it would look like to scale. I don't know what happened there with that photo, but it is about a little over 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and it weighs about 2,300 pounds. So the Arts Commission unanimously voted for that location on December 9th in 2021. I took it to the Parks Board. They unanimously voted for it December 13th, and the Gary Oak Society supports it. I do have some emails from them. So here's the recommended motion to execute Resolution 2202. I ran this by our legal counsel as well. And that's it for the presentation. More than happy to entertain any questions or discussion, and here is the recommended motion again.
Thanks, Gideon. That was short and sweet. Before we take it to council here, I'll ask our clerk to see if we've gotten any input from the public.
No, Mayor, we received no comments on this item.
Okay. So, Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed that there are several from our Art Commission here that have worked really hard and tirelessly on it, and I want to say thank you for that. It has turned out to be super. I mean, words, but yes, thank you for your hard work. I appreciate it very much. And the others on the committee, please be sure. I think Mary Haynes usually comes, and she's not here tonight. So whoever's on the committee, thank you very much.
I certainly agree with that. Councilor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Gideon. You've been a tremendous resource to the city since we hired you, and I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate everything that you do. And to the Arts Commission, I'm really crushed that we can't put this at the post office. That's really disappointing, but I think that you absolutely selected the next best location. It'll have tons of visibility, and it just, looking at the mock of it, almost seems like it was tailor-made for that. So I think that, you know, you chose a really great alternative, and I appreciate the work that you've put into making this happen, and I can't wait to see it in person.
Thank you, Councilor Eisen. Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor, and yes, thank you, Gideon. I really appreciate your level-headedness in a lot of these processes, and appreciate all your effort. And Arts Commission, appreciate your input on this. And the reality is, I think this is a better location, quite frankly. We spent a lot of money to create this promenade to enter our park through, right? And this is going to be the trailhead to that promenade, right? And I think it makes it more available for most people to see and touch and feel, versus being in a parking lot. So great job, and appreciate everybody's efforts on this. And happy to see this happen. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it? But beautiful piece of art. Thank you.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Love the Acorn, love the location. Really, one of the things that we keep hearing out in the community is that the people want art that means something. This is really something that means something to Oak Harbor. And when you look, maybe we're a town that really struggles for that identity and really want a few of these things that define that. And moving forward, I do. Boy, I wish there was a way that the Acorn could be undercover. This is something that will obviously hope last hundreds of years, and I'm assuming that every step along the way will be taken to preserve this piece of art.
Anyone else? Might be a good time for a motion.
So we ready to do this?
Sure.
Okay. Floor's yours. All righty. I move that the mayor execute Resolution 22-02 regarding the location of the Patrick McVay Acorn sculpture to be placed on Southeast Pioneer Way between Wells Fargo and People's Bank on city property.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. That motion reads exactly like that posted as the recommended action. That motion was made by Councilor Hoffmeyer, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay. We don't even need to say aye tonight. Thank you. That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody on council.
Appreciate your work. Okay, we will move on to our next section, which is 8, contract and agreements. And we have a professional services agreement, BHC Consultants, contract renewal. And I believe to make that presentation tonight, our Development Services Director, David Kuhl. David? David, if you're talking, we can't hear you. You might be muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that.
There we go.
Tonight we have a contract with BHC. BHC is a contractor we've been using for the last year. They do plans examining, they do building official services, and building inspections for us. They came into play about a year ago when we were short people. We had a bit of a turnover in our building division. And since that time, they've been real helpful in keeping us on track with all of our inspections and plan review. We then hired Ginger Pennington as a building official who started in April. And we've also added Brian Colbert as our new building inspector / plans examiner. And he's been on staff for a few months. He came to us from Thurston County. So we've also recruited and filled the permit coordinator position that was vacated by Lisa Beebe. And that position has been filled since February 1st. I will be sending out pictures and a little bio of our new employees as soon as possible. The exciting thing is we're currently back to full staff for the first time in a long time. Now, the reason we want to bring back BHC is as a backup plan. It's basically an insurance policy for us in case someone gets sick or moves on. We always want to have another firm there that's ready just in case we need extra services. So we don't pay anything until we actually do the on-call service. City Council, what we're asking for is a contract amendment to add $20,000 to the existing contract and continue the practice of using the firm for on-call services. We'll come back in a year and evaluate our services needs with the contract March 1st, 2023. So this is your recommended motion, and I'm available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhl. Before we go to council, I want to ask our city clerk to see if we've had any input.
No, Mayor, no input received from the public.
Okay, nothing on this, so we'll go back to council then. For input, yeah, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Kuhl. I think that this is a good idea, especially since everyone on board is brand new and the folks at BHC have been working with us for a while. So if needed, they could definitely step in and supplement that help. So good idea. And if nobody else has a question, I will go ahead and make the motion.
Any questions?
All right.
Okay,
I move to approve the professional services agreement contract amendment with BHC for building official services.
Second.
okay, you've got a motion and a second that reads exactly like the recommended action in front of you. Motion made by Councilor Heisen, second by, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor signify by raising your hand. And that passes unanimously. Okay.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. Okay, we will then go on to item number 8B, Professional Services Agreement, Amendment number 4 with Moffatt and Nichol, contract extension for consultant services, Marina FDOC, and other repairs. And I guess we have, it looks like a project manager, Brett Arvidsson, and or our harbor master, Chris Sublett.
Yes, good evening. I'm Brett Arvidsson. I'm a project manager for the city, and we're here to talk about our FDOC breakwater and float repairs. Next slide, please. I'll give you some background on this. The city of Oak Harbor Marina experienced damage to FDOC in February of 2020 and January 2021 from windstorms. Unfortunately, last November, we had a third damage to the dock, and repair of the three storms are all three separate insurance claims. Next slide, please. Back when we started, we had a Department of Commerce grant for improvements to the marina, and these funds were budgeted. It was cost effective for us to both combine the grant work with the insurance work because it involved in-water work, so it was much more simpler to permit and build. Subsequently, last fall, one of our navigation piles was hit by a boat, so that boat insurance company gave us added to the project also. So we've been sort of trying to keep, can't fix it fast enough when it's getting broke. Next slide, please. This is some of the original damage that we saw in 2020. And next slide. This is the main part of the grant work was actually replacing the pile hoops which hold the dock to the piles. Those, you can tell how those are all rusted out. Next slide, please. This is what the damage looked like after last November. You see these panels here where all the wood is, those actually fell over the side, and we'd hoped to recover them, but actually they were lost. So we got pretty badly beaten up. This picture here is actually of the same panel I showed you in the first picture. The next slide, please. And that's a picture of the actual storm that was happening. Next slide. To talk about how we got here, we did hire Moffatt and Nichol to prepare contract documents and permit packages. We did obtain the necessary permits. These permits are pretty extensive. It took us almost a year to get because they involve in-water work. We did advertise and open bids for the job and awarded the project to American Construction Company. As I said later, a damaged pile was added as a separate insurance claim. And we've been under construction for the last 6 weeks. We're nearing the end of our in-water window, but we've gotten a small extension for this. Next slide, please. As I said, construction is nearly complete. We did attempt to negotiate a change order with American Construction to include the repairs from the November 15th storm. We had already bid the project, so the new storm, we did get a proposal, but the insurance companies had some major cost concerns about it and were balking. And the bigger issue was the work required another 2 months and past the in-water window. It actually ended today. And while we can get a week or two extension, they wouldn't give us 2 months. So the recent storm damage was not included in the current work, except for those 2 panels we lost. We had to procure replacements for those, which was kind of a task in itself, just to maintain the structural integrity of the dock. Next slide, please. Only item remaining in the current construction is we have a last-minute change order. We found some, and we had a few of the pile guides were not what they were supposed to be, and so we have to be doing some last-minute changes. With the short window, we're moving ahead with the change order, and we'll be bringing the formal change order document to council at the next council meeting. Next slide, please. These are some pictures of our construction. That's the crane we had out there. It was doing some heavy lifting. This is the crew dropping in a new pile hoop. You can tell the difference between the one we had earlier. So we're quite happy with those. Next slide. So anyway, here we're talking about amendment number 4 to Moffatt Nichols contract. As I said, the construction is nearing completion, but the damage from the most recent storm remains unresolved. We haven't quite figured out what we're going to do with that yet. Moffatt Nichols contract is scheduled to expire March 31st of this year. Moffatt Nichols is current on both the past damage and our current damage, and continuing to contract is cost effective. So right now, amendment number 4 just simply extends their contract to September 30th, 2022 at no extra cost. We haven't figured out where we need to go, and we have to have some further discussions with the insurance company. So once we get those issues resolved in a path forward, we'll be presenting a contract amendment at a future council meeting. Next slide, please. So right now, it is recommended that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign contract amendment number 4 with Moffatt and Nichol, extending the contract to September 30th, 2022, without increasing the contract amount. Next slide. Any questions?
Thank you, Brett. Before we turn to council, I'll ask our city clerk, any input?
No, Mayor, we received no input on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we'll go to council. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. Brett, I'm assuming then to extend this contract, they are available to stay on the job since they're already here?
Yes, they are.
Okay, what about the crane? Is it extra to
Crane
keep
is
it?
going off-site. Its work is essentially complete. We have one more. We're waiting for the you have the navigation pile. We have to put a light on top of it. And that light's been delayed, so I hope it shows up today or tomorrow, and we'll mount it. Then the crane will be moving out. The final work we have done is underwater work, and it'll be done from a small boat.
Okay, so we won't need the crane. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. If anybody hasn't yet, I encourage you to go down to the Marina and check out the crane up close. It is an incredible piece of equipment. I've never seen anything like it. And I've been on Sunday and had a chance to look at the repairs up close, and it's absolutely night and day. You can see everything that's been replaced, and it looks so good so far. So thank you for the good work and for trying to negotiate all this when new repairs, are constantly needed because of the weather. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out yet, I would definitely go down and do that. Do you want me to make it? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and do it. I move to authorize the mayor to sign the professional service agreement amendment number 4 with Moffatt and Nichols, extending the contract expiration date to September 30th, 2022, without increasing the total contract amount.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second that reads like the recommended action in your packet. Motion made by Councilor Heisen, second by Councilor Stuckey. Seeing no other questions or input, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we will then move on at this point to our item number 9A, which is public safety level of service discussion. And for that, I think we have our Finance Director, Mr. David Goldman. Dave?
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, David Goldman, Finance Director. This is a continuation of the discussion that we've been having regarding public safety level of service improvements over the last year. The figures that are in the slides tonight have been updated to reflect the latest 2022 property data from the Island County Assessor's Office, and also to remove the police component so we can better focus on fire service improvements. Chief Merrill will start off by doing a brief recap of the presentation from last month's workshop. Then I will go over the options and updated figures with the City Council. We'll go over the timing and outreach, and we'll also reserve time for discussion and the possibility of a motion directing staff to pursue an option. So with that, I'm ready to run this presentation for the Fire Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ray Merrill, Fire Chief. As you know, I cannot be brief ever. I talk a lot, but I'll do my darndest. So this is going to be a review of we've talked about for the last 14 years, give or take a month or two. This has been a conversation. So we know that we have been short-staffed immensely over the years, and it's getting progressively worse. We want to get our minimum staffing levels up so that at least we've got an engine and a rescue staffed 24/7 at this point. We know we've got an upcoming Survey and Rating Bureau coming up in July of this year, and one of my primary concerns from our last rating was the lack of staffing that we had, that we were able to provide for coverage. We want to maintain our current response times. We don't want them to continually drop off as we've seen in the last couple of years. We've seen vacancies. Just to give you an idea, in the month of January this year, I've already used 30% of my overtime budget because 2 of my captains were out with COVID, and I had 14 shifts I had to cover with overtime because of it. That's how short our staffing levels have gotten. So we're taking a look at that. And then we also have to talk about the future potential retirements that could be coming up in the next 5 to 7 years, as well as some succession planning to make that transition as painless as possible when those days do arrive. And we've talked about retirements and succession planning in the past. Go ahead, Dave. So our plan at this point is when we do build that new station, we want to hire 2 lieutenants to put into that station. And then we're looking to hire 2 to 7 more full-time firefighters. It's going to be a progressive hiring process in order to get those positions filled. And with the new station coming on board at some point, we're going to have to add 4 additional paid on-call staffing positions. That's not people, that's just a position. And then we take our paid on-call folks and put them into those positions in order to provide that 24-hour coverage. Go ahead, Dave. And we've talked about this before, that when we compare us with our counterparts, we have been running 1 fire station since 1912, when our fire department first started. When we started in a barn and then moved our way up to an old building and then moved into a newer old building, and then we finally moved into a new building, which was 30 years ago. So as you can tell, we only have 1 fire station and our comparables have 2. We've seen that growth. Go ahead, Dave. And we've seen how the city has grown over the last 30 years. Since 1992, we've grown by 5.7 square miles in size. There's 3,100 more housing units since 1992. We've seen that growth in the southwest quadrant. There's 500 additional homes planned to be built in the next 3 years within the city limits. And since 1992, we've had 6,300 more residents living in the city, and we're still protecting that 6,300 additional people with 3 people or 4 people on staff at that 1 station. So we have really exceeded our capabilities that we can reasonably accommodate. Go ahead, Dave. So that's our conceptual drawing. When we did the feasibility study a few years ago, our architect, Carletti, came up with this design as a conceptual idea, with the design being just under 10,000 square feet, and a design to have an engine, the Quint, and at some point either a rescue or some other service utility vehicle. With some of the new standards in building fire stations now, we have to have what's called the clean room. We have to have a decontamination room. We have to have an extractor. We have to have a heated room to dry bunker gear. We have to have a secondary room for all the additional bunker gear to go into so that we don't get carcinogens on the bunker gear and that it's protected. There's specific requirements now in compartmentalization of fire stations in order for protection of the individuals inside. So that's our conceptual drawing, and it's a good design that we came up with. Go ahead, Dave. And that's just the layout of the building. You've seen this before. We spent a lot of time laying the building out in order to provide for creature comforts, usability, functionality, and safety of the personnel. So, again, for 3 apparatus, living quarters, an office, a small meeting room, and again, considerably smaller than we currently have. Our station's about 28,000 square. This one's under 10,000 square. Go ahead, Dave. Get an idea what it's going to cost on an average, and this is for utility supplies, small equipment, vehicle replacement reserves, which we have not been able to do for many, many years. Every 2-year cycle, we have put in money for vehicle replacement reserves, and one of the first things we pull out is vehicle reserve replacement money. And that's been an ongoing issue for years, and the consensus has always been, when it comes time, we'll bond for it. Well, the time has come and has actually passed when you realize that our ladder truck is 30 years old. 2 of our fire engines are 24 years old. In the old days, back when I had a full head of hair and it wasn't gray, we considered a 20-year lifespan was the normal life cycle for our fire engine, and 15 years was the lifespan for a ladder truck. And we've pushed our ladder truck out to 30 years plus, especially with the refurbishment that we did, that we bought another 7 to 10 years with that ladder truck. But the day is going to come, so we've got to put some reserves away to pay for that equipment. And we know the price of that equipment just keeps going up. When we first started talking about quints, they were $750,000. Today they're $1.2 million. So that price tag is just continually rising on us. Go ahead, Dave. And of course, you can see the apparatus that we have. And I still say that's a darn good-looking ladder truck for being 30 years old. Go ahead, Dave. And the idea is that we're eventually going to buy a quint. It's a multi-purpose vehicle, like I've talked about before. We get ISO and Washington Survey and Rating Bureau credits for that quint, for a ladder that we now get deficiency points because we don't have a reserve. It is pumper capable. It is EMS capable. It has its own tank. It has its own hose. It's a multifunctional vehicle. Our current ladder truck doesn't carry any water, doesn't have a pump on board. It has to be supplied by a water supply from another engine company. The quint can do all of the functions because it has a tank, a pump, and all the equipment it needs to be multifunctional. But again, we're talking $1.1 to $1.3 million. Okay, Dave, next one. And I got ahead of myself just a little bit, but we know we're going to have to look at a quint. We're going to have to look at replacing one of our engines. So one engine's going to go away. It's going to be replaced by the quint, and then our second engine that's a 1988 will be replaced by a new engine. Again, those engines are 24 years old. So go ahead, Dave. And just gives you an idea what kind of combined cost we're looking at on an annual basis for replacement of the quint, or purchase of the quint, replacement of an engine, and putting money aside for long-term purchasing. Go ahead, Dave. So now this is where Dave's part comes in. I feel pretty good about myself. That was pretty good timing. Not bad. And I'm open for any questions at this point if you have any.
All right. Well,
We do have a couple of questions here.
Oh,
So
sorry.
I think we had Councilor Heisen first.
Go ahead.
If you could back up a few slides. It was what will this pay for? Here we go.
This one?
I noticed that staff is not on this list. How are we going to pay for our 3 to 7 firefighters?
Dave is going to talk about that here just shortly.
Okay, well, I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's up and
I'll
coming.
Stop talking. Okay.
I get to talk about this part. Dave gets to talk about the money part.
Thank you.
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, from '08 to '9, I've heard a lot of this, and it isn't that I disagree with you, but when it first came up about the ladder truck, there was hardly any mileage on it. I mean, I know it's old, but the use in mileage and rubber on the tires, you know, if it isn't really broken, we just had it redone, so we've bought, what, another 10 or 15 years from that.
We bought 7 to 10 years, according
Okay.
to Seagraves out of that.
Okay. All right, I just,
You know, and you bring up a good point, but things that you've got to think about when we take a look at the tires on that. NFPA says you can only use your tires for 7 years, whether you put 10 miles on it or 50,000 miles on it. At 7 years, you have to replace the tires. They're $1,000 a piece, and there's 10 tires on that truck. So there's 10 grand every 7 years.
I'm just trying to see, there are a lot of taxes we've been paying and that are coming that are out of our control, like gas and electricity. So I'm just trying to see if there's any wiggle room. It isn't that we don't need it, we don't deserve it. The problem is that it will be an added tax on everybody, no matter what kind of job you have and stuff. So I'm just trying to get the whole picture here, Chief. So
Absolutely. I
don't
totally
get
agree.
upset yet. I'm just trying to ask some questions. Thank you.
And I'm here for any question that you may have.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, one of the questions I had, and we talked about it briefly in the workshop as well. One of the questions I had, and I think, you know, as we get to David's portion too, we'll see the whole picture. Right now, we're in ISO 4, correct?
Correct.
If we were to go to an ISO 6, what do we think what percentage increase could that possibly cause to a homeowner's insurance, for instance?
As I've talked before, and I've talked to a lot of different insurance companies, and when I've asked them that question, they say, well, it all depends on, and then they get into what your insurance has been like, what kind of claims have we had for the entire city, what's the crime rate been, what kind of payouts have we had on everything. And when we talk going from a 4 to a 5, some insurance company says that's negligible. But if you go from a 4 to a 6, the numbers I was getting was anywhere from 20 to 25% increase in insurance ratings for fire insurance side, because that is a big jump going from a 4 to a 6. So that's one of my biggest concerns. We do have Survey and Rating Bureau coming in July of this year to be re-rated. We were re-rated in 13, and we barely stayed a 4 in 13. We've got a fantastic water supply system. The water department has done a really, really good job. The new tank that we've put in, that extra $4 million, that's a big plus. Our ICOM dispatch center, they got very high ratings and markings. And again, like I said, the last time we talked about this, where we got hammered the hardest was in fire department operations with apparatus, travel distance, and staffing. Those are the big ones.
We got another question here, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Chief, we actually called USAA today. So we haven't moved. We're still 3.5 miles. We know where the fire hydrant is, and all of this. They said our biggest cost, since those parameters, it doesn't take into staff, would be replacement costs. And replacement costs, I know on our insurance, went up 25%.
Correct.
In order. And that's not even repaying for brick.
Correct.
That's just going to wood. So part of that expense, their homeowner's fire for us would be the replacement costs.
Correct.
And what our deductible is. They said you could juggle your deductible. Ours is very low right now. So there's other parameters, but I don't know how much the replacement costs seem to be probably more the highest item on, because we asked them about the rating, 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. They said if it went from 1 to 5, it would have a lot of increase.
Absolutely.
But the biggest thing that we have right now is not the 4 to 5 or 5 to 6. It would be the replacement cost of the house. So, and everybody's home will be different, but that's just, we're also thinking about that. I'm trying to think of everyone's home and checked out mine first. So
Yep.
Anyway, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay. Not seeing any other questions now. We'll move along.
Okay, thank you. So this chart that you've seen before contains all the different items in the cost calculations itemized out by category. So the employee payroll row contains 2 lieutenants, 2 full-time firefighters, and those 4 shifts of paid-on-call firefighters. There's also startup costs, which we amortized over 6 years. There's the cost to operate the station and also reserve for replacement for the equipment. We have payments on a new quint and a replacement engine, and we also have the bond payments on a $6 million fire station. So taken together, the average of those categories is $1.65 million per year. There's options. The options are on the bottom. If 2 firefighters are added, and by the way, this cost does take into account a reduction in the amount of paid-on-call firefighters that would be needed. If 2 firefighters are added, that averages out over the first 6 years of $192,000. And if 3 firefighters is added, that would be $318,000. So if both of these are chosen, which would mean 3 plus 2 plus the 2 firefighters that are already in here, that would be an additional 7 firefighters, and that would add up to $2.16 million per year. So funding methods. So the 2 funding methods that we discussed last time, we also discussed the sales tax, but that raised insufficient amount of funds to pay for this. So focusing in on the remaining 2 are the levy lid lift and the excess levy. So option 1 that was presented included a levied lid lift for the ongoing operational costs and an excess levy for the fire station and quint ladder truck. With this option, the land would be able to be purchased and project design would commence in 2023 if that was approved by the voters, and construction would be able to start either in late 2023 or 2024. With option 2, it would only be a levied lid lift for operational costs, and it would save the funding to build the fire station and to purchase the quint truck. So the land purchase and the project design could occur in 2023, but because of the timing needed to save those funds, the construction would start a few years later in either late 25 or 2026. So here's the same cost breakdown that I showed before. It ranges from 1.65 million to 2.16 million a year. And that is reduced from the workshops we did show last year, which also included police level service improvements as well. Those were costed at $3.1 million. So with option 1, here's the detailed breakdown of the cost per row and also what the impact would be on the average residential parcel. So with the new data that we received from Island County, currently right now, the average residential parcel is paying $604 a year on the Oak Harbor portion of the property tax bill, which equates to about $50 a month. For the fire staff, which includes 2 firefighters and 2 lieutenants, and the equipment and the paid-on-call firefighters, that equates to $132 a year or $11 a month. 2 additional firefighters with a commensurate reduction in the paid-on-calls would be $25 a year or $2.10 a month. 3 firefighters is $42 a year or about $3.50 a month. And the replacement fire engine would be about $10 a year. And everything under the levied lid lift requires a 50% vote. The excess levy, which would be taking out a bond to pay for the station and the new quint, that would require a 60% vote with validation. And the total cost of both of those items would be about $74 a year or $6.18 a month. So taken together with, of course, the existing average amount paid by the city of Oak Harbor citizen, residential parcel, would be $887 a year or $74 a month, which is up from which would be up from $604 a year and $50 a month. That's option one. Option two would be putting everything under a levied lid lift and saving the money over about 3 years, and then constructing the fire station following pay-as-you-go as opposed to borrowing the money. The total of $283.47 is actually, if you add this and this, you get the same exact total. So the total would be an additional $283.47 a year, or about $24 a month, on top of what's currently paid on the Oak Harbor portion of the property tax bill, which also provides the same total of $887 a year, or $74 a month. So I wanted to provide a breakdown of the property tax bill based on the latest data we received from Island County. The average assessed value of a residential parcel is $331,383. That doesn't mean what it'll sell for in the open market. That just simply means what Island County assessed the parcels for. The average tax bill, overall tax bill, including the Oak Harbor portion, is $3,550 a year. As I said before, the Oak Harbor portion is about $604 a year. And the funding range, depending on the package that is recommended, is $216 to $283 a year. So at $216, that would equate to 5.7% of the bill. Of course, this amount would go up, by $216. So you do the percentage based on the new math. And then $283 would equate to 7.4% of the overall bill. And here's the bill broken down. The largest portion of your bill, about 1/3, goes to the Oak Harbor School District. About 30%, or a little under 30%, goes to state schools, which the state takes in and redistributes out to all the schools in the state of Washington. Then you have the City of Oak Harbor portion. Then you have the Island County portion, the Snow Isle Library portion, the hospital, North Woodby Parks and Rec, Conservation Futures, and then you have the cemetery portion at $1.71. And I know that seems low, but I went down to the cemetery and nobody was raising a fuss. I'm sorry, I just had to make that bad joke. All right. Next is the same exact figures in a pie chart. And you can see how the Oak Harbor School District is about 35% of the overall tax bill. State schools is about 27%. City of Oak Harbor 17%, and all the other taxing districts are broken down here on the right. It gets a little busy because the conservation futures and cemetery round down to zero. They're above zero, but they just happen to round down to zero. So I was trying to figure out how Oak Harbor compares to other cities throughout Washington, but the only data that I was able to find on the Department of Revenue website was a visualization that compared counties. So when I went ahead and looked at the state average, and this is from last year because they haven't received the new data for 22 yet, the state average levy rate was $10.48 per $1,000 of property. For Island County, the levy rate's about $9.03 for every $1,000 of assessed value on the property. So options. So something should pop up soon, hypothetically. I guess it doesn't want to, oh, there we go. All right. So I put this menu together of options so the city council will be able to see the effect on the average tax bill, depending on what option's chosen. So if I was to remove all these items from the menu, and we go down to what is currently spent, you'll see that the current tax bill based on the average residential parcel. There's a City of Oak Harbor amount of $604.12, and that's 17% of the tax bill. If we were to add the fire staff and equipment, you can see it pops into this screen over here. It adds to this amount over here where it says City of Oak Harbor, and that increases the percentage of the overall tax bill at 20%. There's state schools over here. This is the Oak Harbor School District, and all the other taxing districts are over here. I couldn't really fit in all the names and percentages in this chart. If we add the fire replacement engine, the bond, and the loan for the quint, You can see how that changes the numbers on the chart and also changes the numbers on the pie chart as well. And then if you were to add the 2 firefighters and 3 additional firefighters, you can see how that further changes the chart. And then you can see that if everything is chosen, the city of Oak Harbor would get $887 a year on the tax bill, and that's 23%. If you take away some of these options, you can see that the percentage goes down and the amount goes down as well. So next slide. So timing. So we went over this at the last meeting, but experience from other cities shows that ensuring sufficient time for outreach, education, and feedback is essential. So due to this, staff would suggest that the 2022 general election be tentatively scheduled for the ballot measures. And you can see that the excess levy and the single year levy lid lift or any of these other flavors work for a general election. And the deadline to pass a resolution, I think, or ordinance, I'm not sure what flavor that would be, but the deadline to get it onto the 2022 general would be to pass that by and provide the ballot language by August 2nd, 2022. So outreach. Sabrina went over this at the last meeting. She talked about outreach at community events. There would be a dedicated page on the city's website. We'd have posts on social media. We can reach out to the community via mailers. We can do videos. We can have speaking engagements where the mayor participates at various groups and committees that meet within the city, and other types of outreach that would be determined. So the discussion and potential motion slide. So the suggested motion, which is a little different than what's in your package, would be to direct staff to move forward with outreach activities based on one of the options we presented today, perhaps another option that will come out of the city council discussion, with the intention of that item being placed on the November general election ballot. And we would be able to bring back to the city council some feedback over the next few months about how the outreach is progressing, so the city council would have a better understanding of what direction they perhaps would like to go in. So with that, we're available to field any questions you have or listen to your direction and follow forward from there.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. I think before, I want to make sure with our city clerk that we've gotten any kind of input from the public.
No, Mayor, we
About this?
received no input at all on this item.
Okay. Now I'll turn to council, and I think Councilor Hoffmeyer.
I think for me as a taxpayer, if you looked at your homeowner's insurance going up 25 to 30%, that would be double to triple what this investment would be. So for me as a taxpayer, I would be eager to vote in for this investment, both financially and, in my safety. And, that is what we would be doing here, is putting it to the voters to let them have a say, either yay or nay. And so I hope that's the direction we go. Another principle that's pretty dear to me is accountability. And, I often ask myself, what does it take to do the right thing? Or moreover, how long does it take to do the right thing? I think moving in this direction has been the right thing to do for the last 14 years. And my hope is that it will take this council less than a month and a half to take a step in the right direction. I drove around town with Chief here, probably a month or so ago, and it was pretty dramatic, the amount of time that it took to drive from, say, Crescent Harbor Elementary out to the southwest side of town over at Howard Point, for instance. I think it was nearly a 15-minute drive, and I think that was somewhere around the speed limit as well. That response time's pretty dramatic. When I was a younger kid growing up in Indiana, I think I was probably 10, 11 years old. 3-4 doors up, there was a 2-year-old boy choked on a grape. It took the fire department 9 minutes to get there, and the story had a very horrible ending. And, you know, I think all of us have said it. Public safety is number one for all of us. And where I'm coming from, the time is now.
Okay, other Councilor Evans.
Make is that, you know, the city of Oak Harbor, we're a corporation, we're the board of directors, and when we've got continuing expenses, which we seem to have a lot of continuing expenses going back to the taxpayers, I think we do need to look at additional options going forward, such as updating building code and looking at options for sprinkler systems, looking at options for the city to start generating some revenue rather than just continuing to dish out cash. So that's something that I'd like to get the focus of the council on, is starting to look at the way we operate a little differently and start operating like a corporation, because right now it does feel like we're a piggy bank that's going to run out of money.
Okay, other, Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things that I think should be abundantly clear, I mean, flashing lights clear if and when we bring this discussion to the public for a vote, is the fact that the total increase that we're looking at with everything on the wish list is $23.62 a month. Because coming to them with we want to raise X number of dollars, 2 million, whatever, to me, I want to know what impact this is going to have on my monthly expenses. I don't care that it's going to be 2,130,000 or whatever that is. I want to know exactly what it's going to cost me per month so that I can manage accordingly. So, you know, even the option 1 and the option 2 charts, you know, the number at the bottom, I immediately go to the number on the bottom right, and it says $74, which makes it look like, if someone, you know, hasn't been paying attention and watching the entire conversation, that we would be asking for an additional $74 a month, which is totally undoable and not the case. So I just want it to be really clear to people when we go out that they understand that that is not what we are asking them to do. The total in any regard would be $24-ish a month, because there's a huge difference. And I personally, I'm leaning towards option 2. I understand that we needed a new fire station and equipment years ago. But I think that, you know, only requiring a 50% vote as opposed to 60 would increase the likelihood of this passing. And I think that, you know, holding off until 25 or 26 instead of starting construction next year is reasonable, you know, to be able to save up. So I would be leaning towards option 2 personally. And I just want to, you know, when we do go out to the public, I want it to be really, really clear exactly what we're asking for of them every month, what kind of commitment that they would be making, you know, and definitely include all of it. It's actually kind of incredible that we can pay for all of those things when everybody chips in a little bit. So thank you for the detailed breakdown. Mr. Goldman, your spreadsheets never cease to amaze me. And that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Heisen. Councilor Stuckey.
Yeah, I wrote down a small list of questions here. Hope you don't mind. With inflation the way it is and stuff, we could always say this isn't the year. But I'm sure you've been told this isn't the year every year. There's always a reason not to do something like this, and we can't always operate that way. First off, this one's for the chief. On the list of items that you're requesting, the different firefighters and stuff, are these all things that are needed to get to that 4-minute response time? I don't do your profession, so I'm going to take your word up. But are these all needs?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any grants we can pursue?
Yes, there are. Some come with really, really hard stipulations. There's what's called a SAFER grant. that you can go to FEMA and ask for an assistance to firefighter grant called a SAFER grant, and it has to deal with staffing. And in the staffing grant, FEMA will pay your firefighters the first year 75%, you pay 25%, or you pay the 25%. And then that kind of changes over the next 3-year cycle to where you're paying more and FEMA's paying less. And then at the end of the 4th year, you are to retain those people on staff, in essence, forever. Because they were put on there by a FEMA SAFER grant, and they want you to maintain that staffing level because you said that we will eventually get the funds to pay those people to stay on. The city of Spokane did a FEMA grant a few years ago, and they had to rescind on their grant, which hurt them when they went out for grant activities in subsequent years because you didn't meet the requirements of your FEMA grant. We did, years ago, with the police department, have to go back on a grant, which did not set well. But that's through a Stone Cipher grant versus a FEMA grant. So there are granting availabilities. We've gone to FEMA for the AFG grant for a ladder truck, for the Quint. And one year they were really hot on buying vehicles. The year that we went for a vehicle, we're not doing vehicles this year, we're doing something else this year. We went for the extrication tools. That grant was denied because they were looking more at buying vehicles. So you never know what grant cycle you're in when you go towards FEMA and the Assistance to Firefighter grant. That's going to open again. We've applied on numerous occasions. One year we were denied a grant from FEMA because the letter that we got back from FEMA said that you had too much money in reserve. So we had a bunch of money sitting in reserve, and they said if you've got that kind of money in reserve, you can certainly pay for what you're trying to accomplish. So you just never know. So there are grants available, but some are very difficult. We looked at a Department of Commerce grant. We weren't able to get that. We looked at some agricultural grants, but our population base is too high to get the agricultural grants that some smaller agencies were able to get. So yes, we have looked at grants.
In regards to option 1, obviously that puts 2 different things on the ballot, the levy lift and an excess levy. What does it look like if one passes and the other doesn't? Does it mean we get everything but we don't get the station? And what does that mean?
You know, I've tossed this around numerous times. And you know, you could look at it and say, well, as a taxpayer, I can build that fire station for $6.18. Let's build the fire station. But I don't put anybody in it, so why build it? It's not like the Field of Dreams where you build it and they will come, because we just won't be able to staff it. So we don't have the staffing to put in there. If I had my druthers, if we can't get both, I would much rather get the staffing and the additional firefighters that I could put into our current station so that I could have enough people on staff to get 2 vehicles out the door for simultaneous calls. If we have to put the station off for 2 or 3 more years, it's not a deal breaker by any means. But I think the important part is to get the people in the building, get our staffing levels up, so that we at least the minimum staffing levels required by NFPA 1710, which we don't even come close to meeting right now. So when we look at what Survey and Rating Bureau has told us over the years, is your staffing levels are way below the level that it needs to be. I think that is the higher priority. But again, it's not going to change the response time to that area, especially that southwest quadrant. The mileage is still identically the same. Where it's going to change is right now, if I only have a 3-person engine company and we're out at Crescent Harbor Elementary, I don't have anybody else in this station to go on a call anywhere else in the city. Whereas if I had an additional crew, a crew of 2 or 3 in the station, at least I can get a vehicle out the door and get going in that direction. Can we depend on mutual aid or auto aid? Mutual aid from NAS, they're a wonderful resource for us. We depend on them heavily, but they can't guarantee they're available. They may be on a call as well. If I look at North Whidbey Fire and Rescue, they're predominantly a volunteer organization. Again, we could be looking anywhere from a 4 to 10 to 15-minute response time waiting on their crews to get to an incident. Again, they could be on a call on their own. So, you know, when I look at it, we need staffing, and we need a building at some point.
Couple more questions. The excess levy, am I correct in that once that money is raised, that levy goes away? The excess levy, that's
Yeah.
not indefinite?
Yes.
That's
yeah,
correct.
That is limited. So, and it's sized to be the exact amount needed to pay the debt service every year. So once the 20-year bond is paid off, it goes away.
And how do we know that this station is, let's say everything goes through, how do we know it's going to be 6 million and not 7 or 8 or 9?
When we first had the building designed in 16, this is going to surprise you, it was $2.1 million to build that station. When we had it reevaluated last year and we went back to our architect and they did the preliminary design on it and looking at what the construction cost was, it was about $5.4 million, and we projected up with inflation up to $6 million. It may not come up to $6 million, but you know, if you go to Home Depot, 3 months ago, OSB was $5.32 a sheet. It went up to $82 a sheet almost overnight. It dropped down to $30 a sheet, and now it's working its way back up. We don't have any control over that. Just as Mayor Pro Tem Munn says, replacement cost is driving things up. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. But when we've talked to some of the experts in the field, it's going to peak, and we're going to start to see a decline in construction costs. But we know by looking at the building department from the ICC, the International Code Council, lays out what the projected cost per square foot to build a structure is. So we've utilized that as well to come up with some of our numbers.
Okay. My last thought personally.
Wait, I'm sorry,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry to interrupt. That figure also includes the cost of the land, which has also escalated over the years as well. I'm sorry.
Sure, thank you. I personally, if you're saying this is what we need, and I'm going to take your word at that because this is not what I do, I like the option 1. I like that for a couple of reasons. First, we got to remember this is us asking the public what level of service they want. This is not the council saying this is what it's going to be and this is how it's going to go down. I like the idea of option 1 giving the public the option of what level of service do they want. It's not an all or nothing. They can approve part of it and not the other. I understand how that could be a little confusing on the ballot and that we'd have to work with our PR to assure that people understand. But I do like the idea of the public having a vote on what level. Do we want to increase this level of service? Yes. And by how much, as opposed to it just being 1. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
You know, and something I've said before, but I think it deserves repeating. We have not, the fire department has not asked the citizens for a bond or financing for over 30 years. We've been very, very cost efficient in the job we've tried to do. The last bond we went for was to build a fire station back in '89 through '92. So, you know, I think we've been prudent with the money that we've gotten to make our department work.
So I've got to jump in for a minute. You mentioned 2016 and the costs that we were considering at that point. That's the year I became mayor, and you might remember some of our early conversations. You've been very patient. I'm not going to say that we've kicked this can down the road that long because, I mean, I obviously had concerns. You do run a department with your paid on call over the years that you've been able to use in our favor. But unfortunately, and we haven't touched on that much tonight, but the paid on call has changed. That group of people have changed, and what they do in their lives is different. We sure see that. Yes, we're growing out there. So you've been very patient, and you know, I will attest that one of the first things we've done is go into that budget process every couple of years when we do that budget, and yeah, we've taken the fire costs out of there every year since I've been mayor. So you know, it's I think it's it's going to be good to get the right thing in front of the voters. And then let the voters decide.
Yeah. And, Mayor, you're absolutely right. There's been such a change in volunteerism. And even to the point where some of you may remember way back when, where there were city employees from other departments in the city that were volunteers for us that could leave their job in the city and come and do firefighting for us. But of course, labor laws have changed. We had to pay overtime. There was all kinds of issues to where we weren't able to provide that accommodation anymore. And we have seen, of course, a change in volunteerism where employers aren't letting their employees off to come into calls during the workday. I mean, it's just a reality. And when I have 9 of my paid on-call firefighters that work out at the base and they're working 48 on and they get mandoed for 72 hours, they don't want to come in, which I totally understand. I mean, you work 72 hours, you have 24 hours off, and you go back to work at the base for another 48 hours. That doesn't leave a lot of family time. So you are absolutely correct. That is a change in our paradigm.
Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I have a whole lot of comments and thoughts on this, and I'll try to be brief. First off, between option 1 and option 2 in front of us, if I had to choose between one or the other, it would be option 1. I like the idea of the voters being able to select a level of service. I also like the idea of, quite frankly, I'd like it to see not be a 51% vote. I think, I don't know that I have such a problem going out with a request for an increase when it is of the vote of the people, and then the people have the chance to speak about it. So, but with that said, I think we need to, listen to a little something that Mr. Evans said here. We need to be rethinking, how we fund this moving forward. I mean, bonds are reactionary, right? We pay a whole lot of money to a whole lot of folks to borrow money, and it adds to the cost. And again, back to why option 1, the 2023-24 construction, I think obviously will ultimately save the city money versus another 2 years out on construction. We may find ourselves chasing our tails there. But bonds are reactionary. Especially when for something like this that we know inevitably as the city grows and it grows a certain direction that eventually we're going to have to provide fire services to, and the fire chief's been saying it for 14 years, and I've been chanting this cry about housing affordability. I mean, this makes housing less affordable. When taxes go up, it's less affordable. When utility rates go up, it's less affordable. It's all of this together. But at the same time, the impact of new construction, the impact of the city growing is stuff like this. We have to provide additional services, and we have to, realize that those things are going to happen. So, we probably long-term need to be looking at a, different way of doing this. I know other cities around us, impact fees are the way a lot of this stuff is funded, and I know it. Again, that's all against affordable housing, but at the same time, to pay $438,000 a year in interest service, whereas if we would have been saving up through impact fees or some other fees, would certainly have less of an impact upon the entire community, and we'd be saving our constituents $438,000 a year in bond servicing. So, I have to choose between option 1, option 2. It's option 1. I'd like to think, though, for long-term operation, fire staff and equipment, that we maybe take a look at a different way of, funding this stuff. Certainly, it's not as bad with the levy lift as it is, the bonding, right? Because the bonding is what costs us the money to service that bond long term, and obviously if we had money saving towards that all this time, we wouldn't have that debt service. So option 1 would be my preference, and I'd certainly like to have more discussion about long-term funding of both the fire department and police and other city services through the possibility of impact fees or, look at what other communities around us are doing, which I think we're going to find that a lot of them are impact fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Weeds. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Merriman, when we were going to go out for bonds for the wastewater treatment plant, I don't know how he found out or whatever, he figured out and presented the evidence that even though we are close to 23,000 now, that we should be classified as a rural community because the mean income on the island is below the state average. So I don't know if by redigging out his papers or asking him to send them over to the finance department, if that would help for any of the grants or anything. Mr. Goldman, do you have any type of prediction, like looking from back at 2021 and we're starting 2022? I know it's a 2-month delay before you see the sales tax and stuff, but is it continuing to rise, our income back into the city?
Yeah, the sales taxes are coming in pretty good. They had that delay, when COVID first hit America, or the world really, and there was a few months where things were way under, but it's really come back pretty strong, and we already have the numbers in for November, and they're just as strong as the rest of the year. And we're hopeful when we get the December numbers in the next couple of weeks, they'll be just as strong. So things are looking good for sales taxes. The property tax is always pretty much within a couple percentage of what you budget, because that's just how property taxes are. All the other sales-related taxes are decent, utility taxes. Well, you know what? Next week, we're going to have a workshop to go over a lot of revenues. I'll be able to go a lot more deeper into property taxes and sales taxes at that workshop.
Well, the mayor would know from 01 to 07, we lost the gas tax, and then we had a recession, and if you put all those years together, we ended up losing 18% of our revenue that we normally counted on with it. We were lucky in COVID compared to a lot of cities because we have the U.S. Navy here. They still got paychecks. They went to fast food, they had to do laundry, they went to the grocery store, so we weren't nearly hit as bad. We were still hit because you see the closure in town still. Different businesses still, we're still waiting or teetering on some of them, and that is sad because these are our friends and our neighbors and our citizens that have put in a lot of hard work for a business. Is there any way to that extra revenue, and I know everything goes up, but to make a line item or discuss about how to put some more money aside for this, or maybe, an emergency on the police department too? I'm just thinking, you can't afford everything at once. So that was one question. The other one is the $110K per firefighter is what you're thinking with benefits and everything. That's what it's going to cost for that firefighter. He's not getting 110 cash in his salary, but with the benefits and everything, it adds up to 110. So next year, when we figure out, it's going to be anywhere from a 1 to 3% raise on a salary. And so it starts to compound. So it's not going to stay at 110 just because this is voted in. I mean, it's just, you got to be practical. Things go up, and maybe a year or two where we don't. There were years here in the city where we couldn't afford that increase. So I would like to win. I think 50% to get passage by the voters. I think we could get that win. The other, I would like to see it, but I don't know if it's there, especially seeing the school bond where the feds, it wasn't our impact aid, it was extra money to build pretty much 60% of 2 brand new schools. So I don't know how they can redo it and if they can keep from not losing that money because they didn't get the votes. But will it truly be 2 items on the ballot? One is the levy lift, and then the other one is the levy lift and excess levy. Is it 2 items, or do we have to choose which one to put on there?
Well, option 1 is 2 items, so there'll
Okay.
be 2 ballot, 2 on the ballot. Option 2 would be 1, let me go to that slide. Option 2 would be 1 item.
Okay, well, and then the voters would decide if we put them both on there. We would just have to be very careful and hope that they vote them both down because they don't understand. And that worries me that when you publicize something that, well, why are we voting on this twice? What's the difference? You know, they see levy and whatever. So that just worries me. Definitely need the voters to decide, but I just don't know if you gamble to go for the big one and have them decide which option, or do we gamble, they'll look at the options, not understand. Do you see what I'm talking about? And they don't vote for either one. I mean,
Actually, they're not going to see option 1 and option 2. Basically, we have to decide, or the city council will have to direct staff to pursue option 1 or option 2, or a different option that the city council comes up with to go in front of the voters. So the voters will see whatever is decided by August 2nd by the city council. So if the city council provides direction for staff to pursue outreach in option 1, then we're going to go out and tell them there'll be 2 items on the ballot: the levy lid lift for operations and the fire replacement engine, and an excess levy for the bond for the station and the loan for the quint. If the city council directs us to pursue option 2, then we're going to go doing the outreach for just the levy lid lift, with not going out for any debt, but saving money to start the fire station in a few years to serve the southwest portion of the city. Or another option that the city council might come up with for us to go out for outreach. So that's what would,
okay, that's what I wanted. I was getting a little confused there. So Chief, if we do option 2, that should give you 9 firefighters. That would help. It doesn't give you, and you can sleep 8 at the station, but you have 2 to 7 new hires, and then you've got the 2 lieutenants, so that's 9 if I add that up.
Correct.
So that should give you 9.
And then that would slow the building of the station down until
Right.
25 or 26. Now,
But maybe the struts and bricks and all of that price, our supply chain would get better than right now, but at least we would have the design. We would have, let's see, the land, hopefully.
we've got to buy the land, we've got
I
to
know,
find property and buy
but
it.
that's in option 1, is it not? Or just the personnel?
Just personnel.
Okay,
Well, I mean, everything's in both options. It's just a matter of how it'll be presented to the public for them to vote. So like option 1, you'll have the bond for the station and the loan for the quint and the operating cost for the fighters and the equipment. And one would be a levy lid lift, the other would be the excess levy. Option 2 has everything, but we would be saving $2.1 million a year until we had $6 million to go forward and actually build the station. And then with the money that comes in the next year, we would use that for the operational costs.
okay. So is it possible, like finding a line item, if we can decide with the budget, with the increases coming in, to start putting money over for the extra equipment, the quint, that will be essential? If we don't get
during the budget process, which will start around June or July and go on for until December when we adopt the new biennial budget, that'll be one of the topics of discussion to look at our reserves and to see if we need to perhaps build a new reserve, and we could use this new reserve for public safety level service improvements, or for an engine or a queen or whatever we want to put those funds aside for. But that's usually done during the budget process.
Okay, I'm trying to see how we can get the most win with the buck, but I just think it would be really hard to put it up and have to get 60%, just because of how voters have voted lately. And I don't want the chief to lose out, at least on personnel, and start having extra money to put aside.
But the 60% is only on the station and the quint. The other levy is 50%.
Right.
So the two are separated.
Yep,
So you've got the operational function at 50%. You've got the capital improvement, if you will, the quint, and the bond for the station is a separate line item at 60% supermajority. So they could vote
So-
for yes for one, but no for the other at option one.
he just said there aren't two options on the ballot. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What is the ballot going to say if we do, I'm sorry, I'm slow. Option one. He said there will only be one choice.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. There'll be one choice. We're not going to say option one is your possibility or option two on the same ballot. So if we went to the ballot in November of '22, we would say we wouldn't even call it option one. But
Right.
we're going to put, the ballot language is, your yes vote will be for the levy to include fire staff and equipment, 2 additional firefighters, 3 additional firefighters, and money put aside for the replacement of the engine for $17.44.
Okay?
You vote yes for that. Then you come back and say the excess, and you only need a 50% yes vote.
Got it.
In this same option, if we do the excess levy for bond for the station, loan for the new quint, at $6.18 at a 60% vote. So there'll be those two separate items on the ballot. If we do option two, there's only going to be one item on the ballot, which is all of this, which comes out to the same amount of money, but it's how the money is collected, and that you save that money for construction and purchase 2 or 3 years down the road. When I talked with Seagraves, they're averaging 5 to 7% per year increase in apparatus. So if we wait 3 years, it's 21% more than what you would have purchased it in '23.
Okay, I want us to be successful.
No more
If
than
it's
I.
explained, you've got 1A, check yes or no for basically the personnel and stuff, and the other one is the bond to pay for equipment in the building. Okay. All right, thank you.
And one's
Sorry, I was a little slow. I'm
That's okay.
just
One's at 50%.
trying to figure out a win here.
One's at 60% on option one. Option two, it's a 50%, and 50% plus one, if I'm correct, right, Dave? 50% plus one.
Yeah.
In order to pass option two. But we don't put it on the ballot as option one, option two. You all, boy, now that's a southern term, all y'all come back and say, we want to do option one, we want to do option two, or we'll continue to look over the next 2 or 3 months for, is there other options? What we're asking for right now is for, and you're going to see it come up, to allow us to move forward with some outreach, get community involvement, see if the community's even on board. If they're not on board and we get a lot of negativity and, everybody we say, nope, 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 then, is it even worth moving forward? I mean, that's something we have to consider, but we need to get the community, we need to get outreach, we need to get input and see the overall sentiment of the community and their support level. That's what we're asking for.
So if the vote goes tonight for what is now called option one, and it goes out, survey, testing the public, seeing what questions are coming up, what the feeling is, and it's coming back very negative, we could put on the ballot what is just listed for option two, possibly. Not necessarily the two things. Do you think we need to do the two items?
No, actually, what we're asking for is just to allow us to move forward with the outreach and not break it down by option one tonight, option two tonight, because there may be some other funding sources that we may be able to come up with during this period. So what we're really looking for is support to say, move forward, ask the community, and see the community outreach and what kind of support we could get from the community. And then we come back to you all and say, option one looks like the community is going to support the levy and the excess levy. All the indicators we've got, the support is there. Or we're going to come back and say, that 60% margin is not there. Let's look at option two. And I think that's pretty close to what we're looking for, right, Dave?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
We got two hands up. I'll go with Councilor Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. Beth's questions made me think of something. I think that it would be helpful, and Mr. Goldman, I apologize because you've already presented this in a number of different ways, but I think it would be helpful next time we have this discussion to see an example of what this would look like on the ballot to a voter, if that's, I would even be happy to maybe mock up something like that, if that would be helpful. But I think it would be helpful for us to see what the actual ballots would look like in the two scenarios that we're discussing.
Okay, I'll put some language together.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And also, well, I might be jumping ahead, but, if we went with having both measures on the ballot, to make it really clear that, if someone were to pass the Quint and the fire station, but not the personnel, that new fire station can't happen without the first. I mean, obviously, we would still be able to save up that money because eventually we'll need one, but that's all clarifying language that we could talk about as we get closer to it. Just kind of, Beth made me think of a few things, so I wanted to get them out there before I forgot them. Thank you.
So Councilor Stuckey.
So before, I'm going to throw a motion out there, but just to clarify one thing, which I repeated, this is just to do outreach activities. And if those outreach activities, which I assume will consist of social media, maybe a mail or something, if those come back negative, it's kind of, we're just not going to try. Does that sound correct?
That's pretty close. Yeah, if we get if I talk to 100 people and 75 say, no way, then why move forward? I mean, that's pretty much what the populace has said. If we get out and we're talking with folks and we're getting a lot of positive comments, yes, it's time to move forward. Yes, why haven't you done this already? Yes, I support what you want to do. Then that's where we really come back and get down to the nitty gritty of what we're going to do, and really break it down into exactly what option one is going to look like. As Councilmember Heisen says, if we looked at it on a bond or on a ballot, this is kind of how it would read, and this is what the dollar amount says. And if option two is this, this, and this, we have to be careful too, because if we get money in and we don't spend it in a certain period of time, as we learned, we got to give some money back. And we know that happened a couple, 3 years ago from some impact fees that we had to return to property owners. So in essence, what we're asking for is to move forward and not break it down by option, just ask the community, have outreach, do surveys, talk to the public, and see what their feelings are.
With that in mind, I'll make the motion. We can do discussion after the motion. Yeah. I'd like to make the motion to direct staff to move forward with outreach activities based on option one, with the intention of item being placed on the November general election ballot.
Second.
So we do have a motion and a second. I'm going to rely on Julie to repeat that.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Stuckey moved to direct staff to move forward with outreach activities based on option one, with the intention of the item being placed on the November general election ballot. This was seconded by Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, so turn to council for input. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Thank you. You changed the motion because the way the recommended action is to implement necessary public safety improvements. It isn't to you had very eloquently, you restated the motion on what the chief had been saying and Mr. Goldman. So thank you, because you worded it differently. I understand it. Thank you.
Any other input? Okay, seeing no other input or questions, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. So that passes 6-0. That passes unanimously. Okay,
Council, thank you very, very much.
got some marching orders.
No candy?
Workshop only. Candy's only out at workshops.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we can move on then at this point in time to item number 9B. 9B is our Planning Commission Annual Report to City Council. And I believe we have our Director of Development Services, Mr. David Cool, back. David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're going to switch to land use now. Don't need to talk about fire departments right now. Thank you very much. It was good, though. Land use, this is the Planning Commission annual report. The Planning Commission's always put out an annual report, and what we'd like to do today is merely show you some of the accomplishments in 2021. Talk a little bit about the work program coming up in 2022. Talk a little bit about specifics. And then I've also added one little piece towards the end about code enforcement. So something I'd like to do eventually is pull all the work we do, including building and planning into current planning into the whole department report. Perhaps at the end of this year, when we have our new permitting system that will track statistics a little better. So for today, we'll just talk about the Planning Commission report. This last year, we had a couple of real big projects we got through. The big project we got done was the Housing Action Plan. And the Housing Action Plan is something many of you probably worked on. Perhaps you sat in on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, perhaps the Island County North Whidbey Housing Affordable Task Force, or some other committee, and participated over the last few years. This particular Housing Action Plan set out a number of parameters for us to take on over the course of the next few years, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. We also got through the Shoreline Master Plan, and the Shoreline Master Plan was a big deal. We got through that in a couple of years and spent a lot of time going through the science of working on shorelines. And eventually we got it through the Department of Ecology. So that was good to get through that, all those agencies, and get the final approved plan. Now, what you'll see in the future as a result of the Shoreline Master Plan will be a new critical areas ordinance will come in front of you here at some point, perhaps later this year. So those are the big comprehensive plan documents that we work on as the Planning Commission. The Commission mainly works, in fact, almost exclusively now in long-range planning because they don't touch current planning activities like they used to due to the fact we use a hearing examiner. Other things they also do is code changes, and a few of the code changes we did get done last year were repealing and replacing the model home ordinance, where we are now allowing model homes to be built at the same time as streets and water, sewer and stormwater can all be built at the same time during construction. So that speeds it up a little bit for builders, perhaps as much as 6 months or more. The next thing we also accomplished, you might remember, was Ray Lindenberg. Ray was very instrumental in getting the new mixed-use development done and the standard zoning matrix that was created. So we took language out of the code and put it into a matrix to make it easier to interpret and easier for customers to understand. The third code change we did last year was also we removed some inconsistent language and got rid of some out-of-date processes. Moving on now to future activity in 2022, the work program. We'll do our comprehensive plan amendments docket, as well as the comprehensive plan amendments, and the housing action implementation. So this is implementing the housing action plan we did last year. And some of those will result in code changes that we'll talk about just below that. So these are 2022 potential code changes. This list can change, but I want to cover some of these things as we've talked about this at council as well as other places. So I'll go down it by bullet, and feel free to jump in if you want, or we can talk about it at the end of the presentation. The first bullet was review the automatic fee increase that's tied to the CPI. And so that could result in even a bigger look at all of our fees. So something to think about as we move forward. The second bullet down is a 72-hour time limit for RV, boats, commercial vehicles that are stored on public streets. And this is not like the Seattle issue where people are living in RVs on the public streets. This is just people storing very large vehicles on very narrow streets in neighborhoods. And so our code could be amended to require people to store those on private property. The third bullet down and the fourth bullet down are basically tied to the building code and the fire code. We have a quick tweak to the building code in the third bullet for existing buildings. And in the fourth bullet, the fire code could require sprinklers in townhomes. And so we see that as a safety need, having talked to the fire department, and that's something that they would like to see. The next two are batched together. Those are conditional use permits, where we could amend the code perhaps to allow things that are huge, like motocross tracks. So that would be something we could talk about. Also, conditional use permits that could allow one property owner to take over the same use from another property owner. The example of that is a church in town wanted to take over another church organization in their building and found that they had to go through a conditional use permit in order to do that. And so we think maybe it should just be the same use, and you should be able to change the name of the church operation. So that's a possibility. Both of those will come back to you, we think, this year. The next three are the housing recommendations that came out of the housing action plan, and this is in the housing implementation plan. The first one, Ray Lindenberg, will be coming back to you with density provisions. The second item is perhaps putting R2 and R3 zone uses in the R1 area. Also the possibility of putting duplexes in the R1. We also would like to take on ADUs in the R1 and R2. And so a number of those very higher intensity uses to go in the R1. Housing, also to raise the SEPA exemption levels. As you know, SEPA was developed about 30 years ago, and that was because we did not have good regulations to deal with major environmental issues. Since that time, a lot of agencies, most agencies have developed good regulations. And so the state has allowed us to raise our SEPA exemption levels to much higher levels because it's really not needed as much anymore. So that'll be something we can talk about as we go forward. Setback encroachments, also we have bay windows, chimneys, and architectural features. We don't have anything in our code for that, so we'd like to take that on. The small cell fee ordinance, you might remember Dennis Lefevre worked on that with you a few years ago. We just need to create a fee for that. The critical areas ordinance below that, that's something that comes out of the shoreline master plan. The next bullet is the possibility of allowing temporary gravel roads and parking lots that are in parks over a certain size. So as you know, we have a fairly large park going on up in the north part of town, and it might allow us to phase in improvements with funding to be able to build a gravel road a little less expensively and a gravel parking lot less expensively on a temporary basis until we can put the funds together to put asphalt in. Accessory dwelling units, that was one where we might not be satisfied with what finally came out of that the last time it was talked about. So we'd like to bring that back to see if owners should be required to live on a property that has an accessory dwelling unit. And a couple more housekeeping issues. One is we actually accidentally didn't delete some activity out of the industrial area in our principal uses category. When we built the matrix, we left some language in there, so we need to just clean that up. And then site-specific rezones. Those are actually type 5 permits. They're classified as type 4 permits now that go to the hearing examiner. And hearing examiners can make recommendations, but the only people that can create an ordinance is the city council. And so the city council needs to be the final hearing body on a site-specific rezone. So those are some of the changes we propose to talk about as we go forward. And I see you're having your retreat March 31st. Maybe that would be a chance for you to talk about some things you'd like to accomplish. And so that list can certainly change. Other projects we work on in our department are annexations, the Windjammer Park planning, we're heavily involved in that. Shoreline permits, we do a lot of shoreline permits actually for the Department of Public Works. Building plan review and permitting, development agreements, site plans, subdivisions, and the new permit system will be taking up a lot of our activities going forward. And I want to thank some of the council members that attended one of our on-site meetings with Davenport, the people that are doing our permit system. That was very helpful for you to see that, I hope. And we hope to have training, will start the end of March. So that should be live first part of April. This next section, we asked the Planning Commission if they had any recommendations to the City Council, and they did not have any. So we asked the question. This particular section here talks about all the activities we did through the year, and it has a recap of each particular hearing as it went through the process. So you can see we did a number of long-range planning things that take a lot of time because we have several touches where it goes to the Planning Commission in a workshop many times before we get to the public hearing. And then same deal with council. We give you several touches at it too to make sure you feel good about what you're working on. So that whole section is a standard thing we have in our process. The last thing that I have for you tonight is the code enforcement report that Ray Helsley puts in it. I just thought it'd be interesting for you to see because maybe you don't get a chance to see this. A lot of things he works on are building code related, outside storage. You can see they did 17 of those. Signs, 14 of those. Trash and illegal dumping, 36 of those cases. A lot of different things like vegetation, growing over sidewalks is a big challenge for him. So he had a total of 126 new cases last year, and he's listed a few that are still open. He has a pretty good closing ratio. If you see here at the very bottom, his closure rate for 21 was 96.7%, and his total closure rate for the last 3 years was 97%. So pretty impressive what he can do. And so that's the Planning Commission annual report, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Councilor Stuckey.
First, to acknowledge we have a couple of folks from that Planning Commission here, so I appreciate that. Got to hang out with you guys for a little bit, and it was definitely a good introduction. When I got that first packet, a couple hundred pages, I was like, whoa, and then it just steamrolled from there. Question about the Housing Action Plan implementation. I'm assuming you already have a grant, because it says a grant from the Department of Commerce will be used. We already have that grant. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councilman Stuckey. We have a grant to help us hire a consultant as we get into some of the heavier duty items. These first few, as you see, they're items that staff is going to take care of.
So I'm coming to realize that things don't exactly move quickly in government. Having read that action plan a couple times on the Planning Commission, I thought there's a lot of good stuff in that plan. A lot of people, things that people are saying on social media. Why doesn't the city do this or do that? It's in there. What is your guess on an implementation time frame of having that plan implemented? I know part of that's incumbent upon us, but what is a realistic for people saying, "Hey, you got this action plan. When are we going to start seeing the things happen?" What's a realistic time frame, if you have an opinion?
I do have a approach for you. The first few items will take the first year, and then we'll move into another phase and another phase. In fact, Dennis Lefevre should be back in front of you fairly soon with the full implementation schedule. I would think it would probably take about 3 years to get through all those recommendations that the Housing Task Force has come up with. The multifamily tax exemption is one that looks very interesting, and that's one we felt like we probably need to hire a consultant to help us develop that. And that's what we'll use the grant funding for.
Thank you, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for some of the items on this list. It's been a time coming, and you know, I challenge certainly your department and the Planning Commission to continue to whittle away at the Housing Task Force recommendations that we presented to the city and the county almost 4 years ago now. And I know time moves slow, but I think we have the opportunity to move some of these things forward. Like you had stated, you know, the tax incentive for multifamily. There's a couple other state ordinances, including the SEPA exemption level, that I think are no-brainers. And the discussion about tiny homes, you know, I think when we came forward with that recommendation, we were looking at a ordinance written by San Juan County that we felt would make a fairly good fit into our community. So I'm going to point you that direction, and I'm certainly going to say that you know, this is something near and dear to my heart, and you know, anything I can do to assist you, your department, the Planning Commission, in understanding some of the intentions and some of those items we wrote up several years ago, I'm happy to do. Feel free to reach out to me, and again, I challenge you to keep moving forward on this, and I'm going to do everything I can to assist you and give you the tools you need to, you know, look at these items and try and get some of them implemented to help alleviate some of the strain we've got going on regarding workforce housing in our community. Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to the next, I guess our executive session, I too would like to thank the two that have joined us tonight from the Planning Commission, especially Mr. Freeman. I know you've been doing this for a number of years, and it is so comforting to know that there's a good, solid decision maker like you that just continues to volunteer. And thank you very much to the both of you. So at this time, the council will enter into executive session per RCW 423110 to evaluate the applications for council position number 3. The executive session is anticipated to last no more than 1/2 hour. Action to create a short list of candidates for interviews at the February 23rd, 2022 council workshop will occur upon return to the open session. Executive sessions are not open to the public. So, Councilor Evans.
I just wanted to make a quick comment in regards to what we're going into with the executive session for. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. We've got a lot of people that have stood up and put their names in, and I want to thank them for that. It's a big deal to put your name in and stand up to handle this role. And as the rest of the council here, we were all elected by the people. I had an opponent, and, the people decided who they wanted to represent them. And that's exactly what they're asking us to do, is to represent them. I think it would be very difficult for us to ask the mayor to appoint someone to this position when the voters have already expressed their opinions of many of these individuals. So I just want to say that I don't think it's in my best interest to override the voters in our decision when we go into that executive session. So, thank you.
Okay, I want to be clear, though, the mayor won't be making this decision. Unless it's somehow a split vote. Yeah, that would be the only time the mayor would make this decision. Councilor Heisen?
Can you take a brief recess before heading into the
Yes, we can. It's 5 minutes. We'll start the executive session at 8:15. And what are we doing for executive session? We are going into the conference room. Okay, perfect. And we can't take anything with us, right? So this is the Oak Harbor City Council regular meeting, February 15th. The council has been in executive session, and it didn't last quite as long as we thought, but that's a good thing. So at this point in time, I'll reconvene this regular meeting, turn it over to our city attorney. Okay, Hillary? I'm going to send it to you now. Right? Okay. Is she with us now? Hillary, are you with us now?
I am here. Sorry, I didn't think we can't restart, can we?
Well, I think, do we have to wait?
Because we said 8:45, right?
Do we have to wait until the full
I
time?
believe so. I believe so. Because if people took a break, wanting to see action,
Hillary,
I think sorry, I thought you were breaking until 8:45.
Hillary, Mayor did state when he made the announcement that it would last no more than 1/2 hour. Does that make a difference?
Usually you have to give a specific time and you can't go back early.
So I guess we're still in, or we're not reconvened then at this point in time? And won't be for another, 17 minutes?
Right, you've got some milling around time.
Okay. With
Where
that,
you need
we'll,
to avoid each other and any open public meetings violation.
okay, we'll avoid each
Half
other.
you go to one side of the building, half to the other.
Okay, I'd like to reconvene this regular city council meeting for the Oak Harbor City Council. It is February 15th. We have been in executive session, and it is 8:45. We're coming back into regular session. I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney, Hillary. Take it away.
So we entered executive session to discuss the qualifications of the candidates. And now it is time to speak about the process moving forward. What you see, I assume you can see also on the screen, I can see it, is one easy way to organize the process going forward. Frequently, councils will want to narrow it down to a top 3, a top 5 for interviews to the next step. And I've seen councils use a grid like this very effectively previously, going through, everybody gets to say everybody gets to select 3, for instance, and the top 3 vote getters moves forward. Or everybody votes for 5 and the top 5 move forward. Everybody votes for 5 and the top 3 move forward. It's just one way to do it. You can vote sort of circularly, or you can you can go around the table and everybody says their top 3 or 5 or whatever you're going to do. The process is really up to you. You can also just make nominations and vote, but that can get kind of unwieldy. So I leave it to you to decide how to move forward. I don't believe you need to make a motion to do it any particular way. You can just agree on it by consensus and then vote on the slate, make a motion to interview the slate.
Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Kind of an easy way, we had 9, one person dropped off, we have 8, divided in half, we each pick 4, is a suggestion.
I see some head nodding. Anybody want to be the first to pick 4?
I'll go ahead.
Councilor Stuckey.
My 4 are as follows: John Shazar, Stephanie Fee Michaud, Ronnie Wright, and Eric Marshall.
So I assume that our clerk is taking, okay, so Mr. Oborn. Okay, so Mr. Hoffmeyer.
My top 4 are the same as Councilmember Stuckey's, actually, so that makes it easier.
Councilor Evans.
As per my previous comments, I'll only be selecting 3, Ronnie Wright, Eric Marshall, and John Shazar.
So those 3 are 3 of their 4, so Councilor Weiser.
I would be requesting an interview with John Cesar, Eric Marshall, and Ronnie Wright.
Councilor Eisen.
My top 4 are Eric Marshall, Stephanie Michaud, Ronnie Wright, and Earl Plumley.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
And I would choose John Cesar, Eric Marshall, Ronnie Wright, 3.
So I'm going to, I guess, turn it back to Hillary, but I know Mayor Pro Tem suggested 4. So do we need to, well, it's up to council, of course, but we move forward then with the top 4?
Top 4.
Top 4.
It is up to council, yeah. And once you have decided on a path, someone moves to proceed with interviewing the top 4 by name or whoever it happens to be.
Councilor Eisen.
I'll be happy to do that. I move that the council move forward with interviewing the top 4 candidates: John Shazar, Stephanie Michaud, Eric Marshall, and Ronnie Wright.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion second to move forward with John Shazar, Femicho, Eric Marshall, and Ronnie Wright. That motion was made by Councilor Heisen and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. That passes unanimously. Okay. I would like to thank all the candidates for applying and their willingness to serve. Thank you so very much for your interest. Any other council input? Motion to adjourn? Mayor Pro Tem. Well, we got a
I'll
motion.
second. I'll
We got a
second the motion.
Motion, then seconded. All in favor? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, council.